How plants and animals can protect our coastlines and towns. Coastal erosion is becoming a major problem as storms intensify and populations along coastlines increase. And it is becoming more evident that natural coastal ecosystems, such as marshes, seagrass beds, mangroves, oyster reefs and coral reefs, are able to effectively mitigate this erosion in many cases. And this while supporting large ecosystems of plants and animals, creating habitat and breeding grounds for many species, and so having a positive effect on biodiversity and carbon sequestration. So let's take a deeper look at these living shorelines and the benefits they offer, as opposed to the traditional engineered solutions of protecting coastlines. Of course, these living shorelines can be used in combination with one another too, where appropriate. So let's look at number 1, seagrasses and salt marshes. Seagrass beds and salt marshes trap sediment, stabilizing the seabed and so reducing erosion. This sediment entrapment allows the salt marsh to grow in elevation, which is useful as the sea level rises. They also absorb wave energy, lessening the impact of storms and tsunamis on the shoreline. It has been found that a width of 15 feet or 4.5 meters of salt marsh can reduce the effects of wave action by up to 50%. In addition, they support an ecosystem of animals and sequester carbon. 1 square mile or 2.6 square kilometers of salt marsh can store the equivalent carbon to that given off by 76,000 gallons or 288 kiloliters of gas or petrol annually. Animals such as the manatee and dugong from the order Sirenia are dependent on the health of the seagrass meadows. Each species can eat up to 30 kilograms of seagrass per animal per day. Their presence is important to the ongoing health of the seagrass meadows. And number 2, mangroves. Mangroves are trees that amazingly can survive saltwater, low oxygen levels and tidal activity in the intertidal zones of tropical and subtropical coasts, coastal estuaries and riverine systems. There are around 80 species of mangroves in the world, 41 of which occur in Australia. Their dense aerial roots trap sediments, filtering water and improving water quality, and absorb wave energy, mitigating erosion and storm activity. Submerged trees can further absorb wave energy as stems and leaves add to the structure, breaking up the waves. They also slow down the inundation of water due to flooding, reducing the effects of floods. Mangroves provide food and shelter for a wide variety of species above and below the water, and many fish breed in the protected regions in and around the mangrove roots. Around 75% of all commercially fished species spend some time in their life cycle in the mangroves, and this increases to 90% in areas such as Florida in the USA. Even some coral reef species in the Caribbean require mangroves for their nursery grounds. Forest density increases as mangrove trees mature, so older forests are capable of greater protection than younger forests and increase carbon sequestration. Mangroves can also adapt to rising sea levels by accumulating sediments and organic matter. And number 3, coral reefs. Corals are colonial marine invertebrates from the subphylum Anthozoa and the phylum Cnidaria that form a variety of different shapes as they grow. Healthy coral reefs can reduce wave energy by up to 97%, thus protecting coastlines from wave action and storms and reducing erosion. The coral reefs also provide habitat and breeding grounds for an enormous variety of sea animals. They are thus also critical to fishing industries by keeping fish populations replenished and healthy. So, if these natural systems are so effective, why did we clear them in the first place? Well, that is an excellent question. Humans have a propensity to think that they can create something better, and often a lack of detailed understanding of the consequences of something they intend to do. So it is a good lesson for us to look at a plan in greater detail and consider all the risks and effects before jumping in. However, there is also the fact that we have built towns in so many places, even in those where natural erosion by wind, sea and rivers occur. Some beaches are washed away and then replenished later in the natural processes, and the wind may move sand dunes around and change their shape. Think too of the structures such as natural bridges and columns that are formed when weaker rock layers are worn away by wave action over time. Those features that we all want to take photos with when we go on holiday. However, when permanent structures are built in any of these situations, we soon learn that we are no match for the physical natural processes. So hard engineered protection is suddenly required. And when building hard armoured solutions such as groins, we change and often increase the effects of the erosion in neighbouring sections of the beach, where down-drift erosion becomes an issue, for example. So it has taken some time to understand how these processes actually work and how our actions affect them. We know enough now to see that quite often the nature-based solutions are the most effective and the cheapest way of protecting the coastline and the communities nearby. They quite often need to at least be part of a hybrid solution. Of course, there are still situations where hard engineered solutions are required, but these need to be implemented with great study and thought to ensure that we're not creating other problems elsewhere. And now, with climate change increasing the intensity of storms, cyclones and tsunamis, along with sea level rise, the requirements to protect our communities becomes greater too. In many cases, nature-based solutions are able to adapt to these changing situations, such as mangroves and salt marshes that increase in elevation as the sea level rises. In many places in the world now, projects are on the go to rebuild and replant mangroves, salt marshes and coral or oyster reefs, and to replant sand dunes to gain the protection they provide, to sequester carbon, and to increase biodiversity in an area. Let's look at a few example projects. The first project, restoring coral reefs. It has been estimated that Indonesia alone stands to gain an annual benefit of $314 million from reduced flooding, coastal erosion, loss of infrastructure, and damage to coastlines by restoring and protecting their coral reefs. Coral reefs act as a physical barrier, and so are a natural defense for coastlines from tidal surges, extreme weather events, ocean currents and winds. Currently, a project is underway to restore damaged reefs in the northern waters of Nusa Penida in Indonesia. Wireframes are made locally, covered in crushed sand and shells, and put in place and anchored. Coral fragments are then attached to these frames, and the coral is then monitored to measure their progress and also to remove algae if it becomes excessive. The project site is 1,200 square meters, or 0.3 acres, at a depth of 4 to 8 meters, or 13 to 26 feet, with around 5,000 reef structures for the coral to cover. And the second project, replanting mangroves. Local groups in the Indian River Lagoon along the central east coast of Florida in the USA have been replanting mangroves for shoreline stabilization and for the economic and ecological benefits. This is a shallow and restricted estuarine system about 200 kilometers or 125 miles long and up to 3.6 meters or 11.8 feet deep. Tidal flushing here is not so effective with it being so shallow, leading to high concentrations of nutrients. One particular species of mangroves there, the red mangrove, Rhizoporia mangle, helps to filter these nutrients, thus cleaning the estuary naturally. About 32 square kilometers or 7,900 acres of mangroves existed in 2011, but there is no government restriction on development since some local residents still demand views, so mangroves there are still being removed, despite the local group efforts to replant. A significant body of research has been done in the area to demonstrate the necessity of maintaining the mangroves there. And the third project, stabilizing sand dunes. Over 3.7 hectares or 9.1 acres of dunes at Merimbula Beach in New South Wales in Australia were cleared of swathes of weeds such as lantana, kikuyu, turkey rhubarb and Madeira vine as part of a project supported by the New South Wales state government and the local Bega Valley Shire Council. Permanent fencing was constructed around the area to keep people out and allow the plants to establish, while still allowing walkways at certain places through to the beach. The dunes were then planted with over 1,000